everyone to our next session on Ideas to Action. Just a couple of house rules before we start. So this session is being recorded and will be available to you later on the platform. We will email everyone round, so make sure we've got your email addresses. If not, send us an email on hello@ideastoaction.io. Your audio will already be muted as you join. We do want you to participate, so we will ask you to unmute to participate. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us in Q&A, and we will get to the Q&A section a bit later on in this session. Use the chat window to say hello to us and follow us on Instagram. Our handles are on the screen.
Thank you, Saba. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our second session today, Ideas to Action. We have a wonderful speaker from LinkedIn today, Lara Julio. So welcome, Lara. She's going to be talking to us about personal branding on LinkedIn and the benefits that it's going to bring to your career. Lara is a very experienced specialist in her field. So welcome, Lara. Over to you.
Thank you for inviting me to this event. Jonathan and I worked together back in the days at Microsoft. So it's very important for us to nurture our connections, which is what we are going to touch upon today. I have a quick question for you. Feel free to use the chat throughout. Don't be shy. We need the energy levels up. It is the afternoon in London. I don't know where you are joining us from. I'm working from my home, as you probably can see a little bit of the background. Hey, Columbus, thank you. Student, lockdown, chance to learn and development. You are in the right place. I'm going to launch a quick poll to find out how often you use LinkedIn. It might be that some of you don't use LinkedIn at all, which is fine. So just complete the poll for us. I can have an idea of how often or not you are on the platform. Excellent. I'll give it a couple more seconds. I'm not entirely sure how many people will be responding to the poll or joined us today. Perfect. Yes, well, we have a couple of us who use it very often and love LinkedIn, and then a few of us who don't use it as often. So hopefully we'll change you around. So I'd like to take you through a journey. I've noticed that most of the speakers of these events have done the same. It's good for us to familiarize ourselves with where people have come from. Everybody comes with a different story after all. How did they get here? How did they get to become a LinkedIn employee? As you can see from my title, it's not a straightforward title as a doctor or lawyer. And that's because my career hasn't been linear. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in the next 5 years. But what I know now is that I enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm here to share some of the learnings that I've had with you. I'm originally from Brazil, associated with football. Don't play football. I know that we're not doing great in football lately, but this is where I come from. I come with an accent. I moved to the UK about 17 years ago, straight into London. I work in hospitality, cleaning dishes, waiting tables. So as you can see, we can come from different backgrounds and yet still get somewhere in life if we work hard. I did a foundation degree with the University of Westminster, and my actual degree, so 3 years of studying, was awarded by the Leeds Metropolitan University. I did have a first, which I'm very proud of, but as Jonathan mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter if you have a 2-2, 2-1, 1, or a first. It's matter how hard and how you persevere throughout your career. I've always liked technology. From a young age, played MS-DOS, video games, and played with Paint on Word and PowerPoint. So therefore, it was for me a no-brainer to try to get a career into tech. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to join Microsoft. I sent a letter to Brook Street, which is an agency that recruited contractors for Microsoft. So I wasn't even a full-time employee for them. I was a contractor. So that also shows to you that sometimes you don't need to go and knock on the door and get a full-time job immediately. It might be that you can freelance, you can intern, or you can be a contractor to get your foot at the door. I then quit my job after 4 years with Microsoft, learned lots, and I went traveling. Well, I just went to Florence in Italy. I loved Italy as a country, lived there for 4 months, worked for a tour operator. And when I came back, I started conversations with various companies to include LinkedIn, where I've been for the past 5 years. Enough of me. Today's about you. Let's just launch another quick poll to get us in the mood of interacting. Which social platforms do you use? So maybe just let me know. I know that some of you love LinkedIn, which is great, but what other platforms do you spend your time on? If you have anything else to say, I know some folks like Twitch, which is for gamers. Perfect, that's good. Instagram and Twitter. I am a big fan of LinkedIn and Instagram. Those are the two platforms that I personally use. I used to use Facebook, no more. Twitter is great, getting the news, and a lot of journalists do that. So these are the results. So it's a good mix. Luckily, we do have a few people that are already fan of LinkedIn. Please drop the chat. WhatsApp, thanks Shania. Yes, I forgot to put that. WhatsApp is a great messaging app, great way to stay connected with people that you know. Perfect. Let's carry on. I love the interaction so far. But what do you do on those channels? Just an example, let's take donut. Eating donut after lunch if you are based in the UK. Maybe we wanted a sweet treat. I wish I had a donut in front of me right now. But if you are expressing yourself on Facebook, Instagram, or Spotify, all of the interactions will be different depending on the platform that you are. What about LinkedIn? LinkedIn, we see the same human being, the same Lara that listens to Donut, an album on Spotify, or the same Lara that loves posting about the beautiful donuts that she just purchased, is the Lara that comes to LinkedIn to seek for the skills, the professional connections, the content that she needs to become a better professional, and also foster personal connections with her network. And it's important for us to just highlight that every business comes with a vision and a mission. And that's because it's important for those businesses to have a purpose, and for us seeking a job or seeking opportunity to align our values to the companies that we want to work for. I quite like LinkedIn's mission because it's very simple. It's there to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. And we are trying to create global opportunity for the workforce. But why should you care? What about you? Why should you build a professional network to connect to opportunity? LinkedIn has 690 million professionals across the globe. About 28 million of those members are in the UK alone. And there's 50 million companies represented on the platform. So there is a potential for you to connect to those companies and hopefully get a job with them and develop your opportunities for future as well. So this is just a little intro. So just to set the scene, and we've got 50 minutes left together, and this is how we're going to spend the time. I'm going to walk you through the importance of defining your professional brand, your personal and professional brand. They're quite aligned these days. Build your LinkedIn profile with some tangible tips and tricks. Build and use your network wisely, because of course we don't want to abuse people that we work with, that we know. We have to know when to approach them and for the purpose that we want to connect or ask them for opportunity to work together. Search for jobs and spark conversations on the platform. There will be 2 Q&A breaks, one halfway through, so get your questions going on the chat, and one right at the end. So stay with me for the next 50 minutes. Defining your professional brand. Nike versus Adidas. Drop on the chat, what are you a fan of? I'm a big fan of Nike, but anyhow, it's very important for us to look at the brand and how do we actually decide whether we like Nike better than Adidas? What does each brand promises? How are they bringing their purpose to life? What celebrities are they affiliating themselves with? I think that's becoming also very important in the days that we live in. So, and what can you expect from those brands? The same applies to you and to your personal/professional brand. Yes, we all have a brand. How we show up is our brand. One thing that somebody told me at LinkedIn once that stuck with me until today is your brand is whatever people talk about you when you're not in the room. So when you're not in the room, what do you want people to say about you, about what you do for the business that you work with, about what you do in the college that you're studying? So just make sure that you think about that. What are you promising those around you? And what can they expect from working with you and around you? And how can you do that? You have to define a little bit more about yourself. What skills do you bring to the table? For instance, what are you doing at your school projects, work experience, even if you haven't yet landed your dream job? What jobs have you been doing? When I landed my first blue collar or my white collar professional job, I mentioned that I work at a restaurant. I helped organize the table plans. I helped to run events. All of those skills were transferable to my next corporate job, which helped me bridge moving from hospitality into a professional world. So just make sure that you have those skills clear to you as you develop them as well. Keep it updated, your network and information about you. And don't forget about what you believe in. I think more than ever, the values, the integrity, do we care, do we respect, what are we responsible for, are aligned to the companies that we work for. I think millennials or the new generations that come find this very important. I'm sure you do not want to work for a company that's polluting the world or that it's not aligned to the values that you clearly respect and want to have aligned to the rest of your life. So just think about it and try to establish your goals. But you might ask, oh, Lara, really? How can I do that? How can I think about what I'm doing 2 years, let alone 10, 30 years? What? I struggle with that. And I heard in Jonathan's talk before lunch, that he is pretty much of a free fall soul, that he just, basically his career is shaping as he goes along. I am a little bit like that as well, even though I've been at LinkedIn for 5 years. I've done 4 different roles within the company. And this is a great way for you, a great tool for you to leverage if you want help deciding how to set clear goals or how to help you understand where to go next. When I was a little bit lost in my first role at LinkedIn, I knew that I wanted to do something slightly different, but I didn't know what. One of my coaches, by coach I mean someone that worked at LinkedIn, I had affinity with, and I knew that they could help me be a better professional, told me to create my own spider diagram. I quite like the sound of it. I'm a big fan of Marvel and Spider-Man and all of that. And this is what my spider diagram looked like back in the days. I wasn't an account manager, so I was helping to sell and bring business, but I didn't want to be in direct selling for much longer. I wanted to move on into more of a program manager or something to help us partner with clients to educate them. So by doing my spider diagram, and you can Google to get some templates free of charge, I realized the skill sets that I thrive in and the things that I wanted to do going forward. And you also have to ask yourselves, what do you enjoy doing about your current job? What do you enjoy about the course that you're studying? What are you doing in a day-to-day? If it's playing football, you might not become a footballer, but if that's truly your passion, maybe try to look to work for, Arsenal or different teams that you could do an entry job. So just think about what are your skills that stand out the most, and then use LinkedIn or use Google to research for titles. For instance, my job title at LinkedIn changes quite often. It's very hard today to go for one particular title. I'm actually thinking about my next steps in my career, and I don't know what I want to be in terms of a specific title, because my career is not linear, and most of us on this call is experiencing the same thing. So just instead of just looking for fixed titles, think about skills and think about how to search for people that are doing something that potentially you could be doing in the future. So let's get started with building your LinkedIn profile. I'm sure all of you are listening to me, but you might be looking at your phone at the same time. I have been guilty of doing that myself during virtual sessions these days. But do Google yourself. Maybe if you are Jonathan Brown, because it's such a common name, sorry Jonathan, there's famous people called Jonathan Brown, maybe you won't come up with the first result for Google or Bing. But in my case, when I searched for Lara Julia last, both Bing and Google show me results that you can clearly see is a LinkedIn profile. It is my LinkedIn profile. And that's why it's so important for you to spend time on your profile. Make sure it's up to date. Make sure you are happy with what the message you are conveying on that particular profile. But who is on LinkedIn? A variety of people. Hopefully all of us are, but we've got Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London. He's actually been quite active on LinkedIn as of lately. Do follow him to check some of his content popping up on your feed. Scottie Pippen. I had no idea who Scottie was until I watched Michael Jordan's documentary on Netflix, but I love the man since watching it. I think he's a cool guy, and he's on LinkedIn. I came across his profile and I found that quite interesting. Yvonne. Who is Yvonne, Lara? Well, she's a good friend of mine. She's worked with me at LinkedIn. I also recommend you to follow Yvonne. She comes up with great tips on how to use LinkedIn, so do try to follow her if you can. And we've got Jennifer Lopez. So as you can see, LinkedIn is not only for white-collar CEOs, directors, it's for all of us. It's quite versatile as a platform, even though we might think otherwise. Make sure you have a great picture. Nowadays, again, get your great iPhone, your great Samsung Galaxy, or get a friend of yours that's got maybe a better phone than you to take a picture. It takes seconds to do that, to take a nice-looking professional picture. And spend also a few seconds updating your profile. Make sure you have a great picture. Nowadays, again, get your great iPhone, your great Samsung Galaxy, or get a friend of yours that's got maybe a better phone than you to take a picture. It takes seconds to do that, to take a nice-looking professional picture. cover image. I love coffee. I've taken 2 today. That's my limit, but I can't function without it. That's pretty much a little touch to reflect my personality, but I've seen some more creative cover images being used. So go for it. Use that canvas to express a little bit more about your personality. Spend some time editing your profile. As I said, it's very hard today to have static job titles, unless you are indeed a GP or a doctor or a lawyer. If you are in the digital space, like most of us, you will be crafting new titles as you go along. And it might be that you have multiple jobs going. So I know that the organizers of this event have full-time jobs as well as organize ideas to action. So their titles, or their headlines, as we like to call, will reflect that. And that's why we left the headline to have 200 characters as of 2 weeks ago. Used to be a maximum of 120, but now it's 200. And the reason being is that we want that to be your canvas. You don't need just to put what you do in your job. You could think about other things. For instance, how am I unique? What skills do I bring to the table in a short sentence? Or most importantly, you might want to think beyond your current title. You might be a digital assistant today, but what do you want to do in future? Use the space to craft that. This attracts, of course, recruiters, future employers, but also says a little bit more about who you are and who you're trying to be professionally. Dedicate some time to your summary. Josh is a rather senior person at LinkedIn. He's our VP of EMEA. Why did I bring him as an example? Because I find his summary has a very easy to follow approach, a formulaic approach. As you can see, the paragraphs are quite laid out. The first, the second, and the third paragraph in Josh's summary is dedicated to his titles, what he does today and what he did prior to joining LinkedIn, and highlighting some of his key skills in those titles. In your case, it might be that you just need one paragraph to say what you're doing today and what you did at school. If you recently graduated, make sure to use a summary to call that out. And I quite like the fact that he uses his fourth paragraph in this example to explain what he does outside of his core role at LinkedIn. He is an advisor to different boards. So in your case, if you are a volunteer or the ideas to action folks will certainly include that on their summary. And the final paragraph is rather personal. And that's on purpose. We don't want LinkedIn to just be black and white. We want to add some color. The hobbies. So in this case, well, Josh is rather senior, but for me, if I am a fan of scuba diving, that'll be a great conversation starter if I ever bump into Josh in a corridor or if I ever, meet with him in a social occasion. So just make sure that you also take some of these ideas to think about your summary, because the summary does help with the search for recruiters and professional future hires as well. So in your own time, do dedicate some time to build that summary. Grab a friend, grab a family member, maybe a teacher if you recently graduated, to brainstorm the words that best describe you. Up to 20, and then narrow that down to 3 and 5, and see if you can start crafting your LinkedIn summary using the formulaic approach that I just covered on the previous slide. Other areas to consider, of course, education. What did you achieve recently? Skills and endorsements. Endorsements, we'll cover that shortly, but it could be from a teacher, a previous employer, a colleague. It could be from anyone who you have worked and done a great job with to endorse you on the platform. And accomplishments. If you have taken an online course recently, I know that Columbus has been spending some of his free time to be a better person, better professional. If you've taken anything online, write that down as an accomplishment. Attending this event, in my eyes, is definitely an accomplishment. You dedicate time and attention to it. So those are some tips for you to focus on the interface. But what about the back end? What about the settings, which a lot of times gets neglected by people? Do pay attention to your settings. What I recommend is just for you to go read. It's quite self-explanatory. Spend 5 to 10 minutes reading each of the headers to understand how you want your profile to show up. One of the things that I recommend here, as you can see, is the job seeking preferences. If you are open for jobs, make sure to toggle that on. I actually have my open seeking preferences on even though I'm happily employed, thanks, knock on the wood. But the reason I do that is because I'm curious to see what kind of job offers will come my way from recruiters, so I can better tailor my profile for the jobs that I actually want to be contacted for. So this is a quick tip. Even if you're not in the market for a job, I would personally turn that on. No one can see it apart from recruiters. On your settings, again, continuation, go through all of the settings on your profile. Make sure you have what we call the vanity URL. Otherwise, it'll just be a bunch of numbers and letters. In my case, I made sure that it's linkedin.com/in/Lara Giulio, my name, but make sure that you claim that for your name if you haven't done so. I'm going to stop here, Saba, for some Q&A before we resume the other half of the session.
So, hi everyone. Do we have any questions for Lara?
I see a question from Columbus. Columbus, if you want to say hi, feel free to unmute.
Hi, Lara.
Hi, nice to hear you. Excellent. So I guess your question is right there. So how do you balance confidence versus arrogance? Yes, there's definitely a fine balance. You don't want to use too much of I think listing a shopping list. And I think we've learned that from previous LinkedIn profile, when people just list they are passionate, they're hardworking, they are the best, they've done this. It's not about you showing off what you do, but focusing on the key skills that you have extracted and learned from each position that you have had, or in your case, if you're a student. Don't just go by summarizing what we've achieved over the past 3 years. Think about what do you want to extract from that experience and highlight in a concise manner in your summary. And that's why asking people helps, because you ask a colleague or you ask a teacher, they will give you a lot of words. Do write all them down. But when it comes to writing a summary, think about 3 to 5 maximum that you want to help you become your brand and help you write your summary. And the tone and voice, personally use I. We find that people that say, you know, Lara Giulio is an experienced salesperson, that tend to sound a little bit more arrogant. So use the first person. That's the main recommendation to avoid the pitfall of sounding arrogant. And yes, and use the summary carefully. Don't just go with a shopping list of listing of the great things you've achieved in all of the keyword, the buzzwords, as we like to call them. Does that help, or would you like a little bit more guidance?
Yeah, I was just keen to get your opinion on that, because along with learning and joining these webinars, I've been developing my LinkedIn, and as you suggested, asking family members, asking family friends for their thoughts. And, you know, you get a mixed opinion on what you should do. What's your approach to that? Do you want to bore people with too much?
There's no right or wrong. Of course, your personality will come across, but there's preferences. And I take Josh, as I said, he is arguably the most senior person at LinkedIn in the region, in EMEA and LATAM. He's more experienced than what his profile shows. Can you see how concise? There's only how many paragraphs there? There's 5 paragraphs. He hasn't gone rambling about all of the greatest achievements. He tried to be as concise as possible, yet he's showing the value of himself as a professional. And I love that at the end, he saves short sentences to call out some of the extracurricular stuff as well as hobbies. So that's why I like to bring his profile as a best in class. I'm personally working on mine, but mine won't be much longer than that. I have seen people ramble. How actually realistically do you think people will stop to read all of those paragraphs? They won't. They want people that are great at business writing, they are concise, they come across well by using the right words, but also to share some personal information to allow them for some connectivity. But yes, what I can do is, you are going to get a bunch of online courses that deep dive a little bit more into how to write a summary. They are free of charge on LinkedIn Learning, so I have them on the slides, so watch out for that. But also, just take a look at a few people that you admire to see if they have dedicated time. Some people don't. Some people leave their summary in blank on LinkedIn, but I would most likely look at Josh. There is a few other people that I can think of that work at LinkedIn that have spent some time to organize their summary. And that can help you then understand how do you want your summary to be reflective of your achievements.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Sorry, it's never straightforward, but yeah, I like the formulaic approach. So 2 to 3 paragraphs about career, one paragraph about extracurriculum and one paragraph about hobbies. So that should help. I need to work on that myself. Any other questions? I can take maybe one more before we move on. There'll be time at the end as well. Shania?
Hi, so my question is, when it comes to listing like your work experience, for example, if you're working in retail, how do you make it sound interesting? Because it's kind of like you maybe tag items, for example, but then it's like the employer would know that's a typical role type of thing. So how would you kind of express that?
You have to explore a little bit of creativity. So my profile is changed now because I have got good 10 years of experience in digital. But before that, as I mentioned, I used to wait at tables, work at a restaurant, but I had to tell a story. I had to be more creative than just I waited the tables. What I did have someone to help me who is a native English because I'm not. But I use some creative tools. For instance, thinking about by working at a restaurant, what transferable skills did I get? Well, time management, because I want to make sure that the tables were in and out so I can get more business in. Also business acumen, because I want to turn around the table. Customer service, I still want to do that with a customer service flow. And this is how I achieved it. So you just have to be creative. You talked about tagging items. It sounds quite mundane, but how important is that? This is organizational skills that if you didn't make sure that the items were tagged correctly, that could have business implications to the retailer you worked for. So you just have to expand on all of the skills that you currently do and how can they be transferable to your next career? How can you tell a little creative story around it? So tagging items, which sounds just, oh, it's just tagging items. But if you didn't do that, what would it cause for the business? It would cause confusion for the clients, problems with the back-end tracking of the items. So that was an essential skill that you were responsible for. So I would call out, I was responsible for ensuring that all of our items were tagged accordingly to ensure that the inventory checks were met by the manager. You just have to add creativity. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Yep, that helps.
Excellent. Right, we are going to carry on with the presentation, but there will be plenty of time for Q&A. I'll make sure that we have at least 10 minutes left for that. Build and use your professional network, and I have on purpose put wisely between brackets, even though that should be in capital letters. We don't want anyone knocking on our door too much, right? We want to choose when to knock on someone's door, because when they open, it needs to take you places. And the power of network is incredible. As I said, I met Jonathan Brown, who is part of the Ideas to Action Foundation of this event, back in the days in Microsoft. And we stayed in touch, yes, but we both just followed different careers, different paths. We have met perhaps once in person ever since, and that's been, 5-6 years ago. But we stayed in touch, and he knocked on my door to find out whether I would be interested in coming to this event and speaking at his event. So that's why it's important for us to nurture the network of people that we meet throughout our lives, be it at school, be it at our careers, as we start to progress further. And there's different levels of connections. There's first degree, people that you know who they are, therefore you connect first degree. There's also people that are connected to your connections, second and third, that potentially you could reach via LinkedIn. One thing that I recommend is for you to, of course, go onto LinkedIn, the connections, see who is there that you might know and connect with them, or search for brand new people that you're interested in. I've done that recently. I was looking for partner manager type of roles or partnership type of roles. I did a simple search to see who in my network was I connected with that did some similar jobs, or even people that I didn't know, but this person seems very well, presented and good experience. I'm going to follow them. I'm not quite able to connect because I don't know them, but I can follow them. And what does that mean? It means that I can get their content on my feed. I can see what they're posting, but also if I ever need to refer back to their profile to tidy up mine to be more similar to what they are. So that's another tip for you as well, Columbus. Maybe think if you have a clear idea of what job you want to go for next, what I recommend is for you to find people that do those sort of jobs and see how do they come across on the platform. And you can establish who has been successful or not, right? I think it can be easy to do by looking at their career, by looking at their achievements. So that's something else that I recommend. And as I mentioned, you are, of course, able to connect to anyone on LinkedIn if they are second degree. If they are third degree, you need to have a premium membership for that. We're giving some away, as Jonathan mentioned. But when you connect to someone on LinkedIn, make sure that you make it clear what's the purpose of that invite. Don't just send a connect invite. I have rejected, or I have got many connect invites that I don't look at unless at the first paragraph I see, I met you, I heard your talk, I want to connect for this purpose, we have this thing in common. Whatever it is, you need to find common ground before you send an invitation. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you follow the person until you are able to connect with the purpose. I learned that through my years. I still try to send an invitation, even if I'm not quite ready to connect. I might still want to invite them, but I need to write something to justify that invite. If not, follow. Follow is available to anyone on LinkedIn. You have to change your settings. You can choose to have people send you an invite to connect, or send an invite to, or just follow in this case. He is the president and CEO of Nike. I love Nike as a brand. You can clearly see whether I'm a Nike or an Adidas fan, but I wouldn't feel comfortable. I'm not even ready. Why would I even connect with the CEO of Nike? But I might want to follow him to see what he publishes on LinkedIn, because by following members, they will fall within the algorithm that will pulls and create the feed that you scroll through to see that appears, tailored to your connections, tailored to the follows that you've made throughout the past. So hopefully that's clear, the distinction between sending a connection invite with a purpose versus just following someone. And do ask for recommendations. I have been very lucky that I adopted LinkedIn a long time ago, even before I joined LinkedIn as a company. And I asked people that I worked with back in the days, do you mind sending me a recommendation? Sometimes I would send them back, give them one back, or sometimes it would just be a favor, not to be retributed at that time, but in future, which is fine. You don't need to be a equal exchange. I recommend you, therefore recommend me. It could happen that way, but it's not the only way. In your cases, or in case of people who perhaps are students or perhaps working in a retailer but wants to change their career into something else, do ask your colleague or your manager or someone that has worked with you, and maybe coach them a little. Maybe tell them, someone that you trust in the retailer or in the shops that you work, look, in a year or 2 years time, I would love to work for a digital agency. For me to get there, I need to build my profile, my presence. Can you write me a recommendation? Here are some things that if you could mention, that would be great. For instance, you're great at managing customer service, or you're great at keeping the items tagged and organized. Just help them as well. So then it makes it easier to be a transaction and you get a favor from someone. Request for referrals. This is also important, of course, if you are ever looking for a job at Vodafone or LinkedIn or the places that most of us are employed right now. Find the job first. Don't knock on my door or on anyone's door and say, I would love to work for LinkedIn. Can you help me? Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You have to do the work before you try to open the door, as I mentioned. When I first got my job at Microsoft as a contractor, I wrote the contracting company a letter of why I wanted to apply for that job. I really did the preparation. So if you find a title or find a role that's online, that's open to apply, and you feel that you are ready to go for it, then it might be a good opportunity for you to see who you're connected. If someone works on that company, by all means, ask them, I found this job online in your company. I'm quite interested because of this and that. Do you think you can refer me? And then they can help you from there. Excellent. The penultimate section of today's presentation is around searching for opportunities, be it jobs, internships, or even mentoring events on LinkedIn or off LinkedIn. Explore jobs, make sure you set your search preferences. As I mentioned earlier today, I left my job preferences on. The reason being that I'm curious to see what jobs come my way from the recruiters. I'm happily employed, luckily, but for me, it's important to know what else is out there. Equally for you, you can do that. You can also go onto linkedin.com/jobs to take you to the page where you can create alerts. And one thing that I recommend is follow the companies that you're passionate about. Create alerts for those companies. I love Lego. Imagine if the dream job ever comes up at Lego, I'll be jumping on it. But I need to stay in touch with Lego before that. I follow the company. I start to see more of their values, things they're posting. I get alerts for jobs that they are posting, which most likely engineers and things that I can never do. But still, I think it's a good way for you to at least follow the companies that are similar to the values that we discussed earlier on, aligned to where you want to go in that sense. Mentoring. So you joined today's session because you wanted to hear from people that have got some years of experience, that perhaps gone through where you're going now. As I said, I transitioning from working hospitality into the digital world. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of knocking on doors, but it can happen. In this case, I would put yourself out there. Networking can be quite off-putting, especially if you are an introvert or if you don't like crowds. But there's a lot of network events today that are happening virtually, like this event. So it's easier for us to just log on, connect, learn, and perhaps connect with people that we've met throughout. Some examples is, if you're interested in digital, the IAA, they do what they call virtual speed mentoring. If you Google the IAA, you will find out how their virtual speed mentoring work and perhaps sign up to learn and to get into that. Josh, who I talked about earlier, he's our country manager VP for EMEA. He is outspoken about equality in LGBT, and he talked about advertising. Advertising, again, is a community that you perhaps could be something you're looking for. You could follow, you could engage and see how you can get opportunities from organizations that align to your values. Finally, the Prince Trust, Get Hired. There's many others, the Career Accelerator, who is sponsoring this event, Youth UK. So there's different ways you can stay connected and discover opportunities. So yeah, continue to do that. You're already here, you're doing the right thing. And then the final piece of today's session before we break for a Q&A is around sparking conversations on LinkedIn. So far, we've defined what we want our personal/professional brand to be. We went on to make sure that we tidy up our LinkedIn profile, following some of the best practices that I shared, take some time to do the exercise that I shared, the spider diagram, asking friends to describe your skills, etc. And then you went on to start to search for the jobs that you want to receive alerts for, follow the companies you want to hear from, maybe invite people to join your network to open doors for you. You've done all of that. Don't be afraid to start to engage and expose yourself on LinkedIn. A lot of time people go onto LinkedIn with what we call the stalker hat. And I did that many times. I just scroll through, I see stuff, I might give it a like, might react to a post, but I didn't feel confident enough to post myself. So here are some ways that I'm going to be explaining to you shortly on how to do that. People do tend to scroll through the feed but hardly engage, and I understand where you're coming from, because I used to pretty much do the same when I first joined LinkedIn. Here are some ways that you can move past just the scrolling through and rarely engage. There's different ways you can spark conversations on LinkedIn. You can post a short-term post or polls, which I'm going to cover shortly. You can write a long-form article if you're feeling brave, and I'll explain how I wrote my first article. If you feel even more courageous, you can shoot a video of yourself or ask a friend to do it. I haven't done that yet. I do my videos when I have sessions like this, and I'll keep it at that. Or you can comment. Maybe if you don't quite ready to put content out there, comment on what's out there. That's a good way to start. So let's go through some of those before we break for Q&A. Posting and engaging with your community. There's different ways you can do that. As you can see here, all of the options. You can celebrate a teammate. You can just write something you want to talk about. You can create a poll. I think polling on LinkedIn is working quite well recently. And you can decide whether you want to post on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So we saw earlier on today on the first poll that I did that some of you are actually quite avid users of Twitter. And if you want to save time, you could actually use LinkedIn to post on both, as long as you use the right character limit of 255 characters. But what to post? You can post about your work, passion, elevate others around you. So for instance, about your work. Nicola Timmins, she works with me at LinkedIn, and recently she completed her Prince certification. She posted about it. To your question early, Columbus, how arrogant are people when they talk about their achievements? There is a fine line. If someone you're connected with always posts about me, then we know the intentions of that person. But if that person does a mix of things, they do call out their achievements because they're proud of it, they want to share with their community, and they want to get some reaction out of it. We'll help them professionally to grow. So Nicole is doing the right thing. She does post a lot of other stuff as well. In this case, Rylan, he talks about his passion. He loves classical music, and he brings that to the work that he delivers. Who would have thought that putting a picture of Pavarotti, a classical musician, on LinkedIn would work? These posts particularly generate a lot of engagement. So you can be quirky like that. It doesn't only need to be, I achieved this in my work, I am great, pat on the back. And then finally, make sure that you raise those around you. Bo is a security officer at LinkedIn. I'm working on getting him a profile. If you ever come to our offices when we reopen in future, hopefully we will reopen, he is great. But it was giving a great talk to me that morning. He was very inspirational. So I secretly caught him on camera. He's never forgiven me since. But as you can see, it generates a lot of comments and feedback. You can do the same about those you work with. Of course, in the right tone and voice. I wouldn't put something of Bo saying something rude. In this case, he's saying a really nice speech about motivation in the workforce. What else can you do? You can tag colleagues when relevant. Don't go on tagging a list of 10, 15 people. Keep it to 3 to 5 people. If you have a long list, it's fine, but don't just do it for the sake of it. Use hashtags. We say 2 to 3 is a great number for LinkedIn, unlike Instagram where you have the more the merrier. 2 to 3 hashtags will still help you to get twice the reach, which is great. Test the times that works for you. HubSpot used to say commuting hours when we used to commute. Now that we work from the living room, there's no commuting hours, but it's still applicable. What we mean here is think about early morning, like 7 to 10ish, lunch break, evening, because it's most likely when people have their LinkedIn open on their laptop or phone. Yes, laptop, because LinkedIn is acceptable to have it open whilst you work. And then diversify your post. If you're not ready to say something net new, maybe share. If you follow one of us and we post something cool that just share. Maybe add a line about why you're sharing it instead of just resharing it. And that's a nice way to use syndicated content, but to start to have a voice on LinkedIn. And it's very important to become that person, to have a voice, because employers seek for that. They seek for someone that's interested, that is active, even if you're commenting. And it does take time. We're not asking for all of you to constantly just post on LinkedIn every day or go and write a long form, but try to get comfortable with doing it in small measures. Now, the scary thing of publishing an article on LinkedIn. I've been with the company for 5 years, and the first time that I actually pressed publish was in 2018. And it wasn't about advertising. It wasn't about teaching people how to use LinkedIn. It was about my Black girl crush. I love the show called Insecure. They just won a lot of Emmys, which I'm very happy about. And I wanted to bring Issa Rae, who is the producer and main actress of the show, and some of the work that she has been doing around the importance of mentoring up and sideways. So not just looking for leadership or for people senior than you to help you in life, but really looking for your peers. And she talks about being, a Black woman in entertainment. So I love the intersection and the topics that she addressed, and I decided to publish about that. Even though I am not a Black woman in entertainment, but I felt a lot of her life experiences reflected on mine. So feel free to take a read. You might like it or dislike it, that's fine. But the intent was for me to publish something that I felt comfortable with. You might say, well, is this for LinkedIn, Lara? Well, it is. If you read it, the tone and voice is what matters. If you're passionate about a topic, we've seen a lot of Black lives being written on LinkedIn with the right tone and voice. As long as it's not attacking and being rude to others, then is the place for it. And of course, I went on to get more comfortable and wrote about other stuff. Think about your audience. People that I connect with, I knew they would be okay about me talking about my personal experiences. So that's why I did. Use your voice, be authentic. Don't shy away from that. Include a photo, but make sure that you have the rights to that image. You can either access via Google rights or tools like Unsplash or Pixabay. They offer free images anyway, so you can just take one of those images and credit the photographer. Create a headline that captures attention. Hopefully you will be reading My Black Girl Crush to know what's about. If she's talking about her love life, well, go and read and see. And the article length. A lot of people ask, how long should an article be, Lara? That's not the question you should be answering. You should be answering, how much do you need to tell the story you are proposing to tell on LinkedIn? But ideally, 800 to 2,000 is the range that we recommend. One thing to call out is that I am no native. English is not my first language, so I would not trust pressing publish without having checked on the grammar. I did ask a colleague to run through the text first, but also I have Grammarly, which is a tool free of charge attached to my Chrome. So anything that I write is grammar checked by Grammarly. If you haven't met this tool or used this tool before, I highly recommend, even if you are a native speaker. And then if we move on to video, if you're brave enough to, maybe you are, is your niche, maybe you're great and digitally savvy. So there's different ways to do it. I've got some examples here. Do check String. String is one of what we call LinkedIn's top voice. She's very active on the platform. She does a bit of everything to include video, and she uses captions. Captions are very important because most of the videos online are watched with sound off. So if you can produce captions or use a platform that produces free captions for you, do it. Think about the opening shot. Again, people talk to people. Try to have that interaction going. 1 to 3 minutes is great, and think about mobile users. From a business standpoint, for me, the best videos produced out there also follow the World Economic Forum. They're great. And this is us taking you to an end before we break for Q&A. As I said, there are free resources. You have 60 minutes with me today. Hopefully I haven't bored you to death, but there's other resources you can go and invest time in your profile and your story. There's a free course on LinkedIn Learning, which is called Rock Your LinkedIn Profile. The link is here for you to take. She talks a lot more in detail about the stuff that I just covered in an hour. You can also look at quick tips to really make your profile stand out. So perhaps Columbus, you might find some of the answers you had earlier in this link, or how to post on LinkedIn as well, how to develop a little bit more about what I touched on. And with that said, before we break for Q&A, I just wanted to leave with a couple of quotes. I think we all have our favorite quotes in life. I am a Microsoft fan, but I can't deny that Steve Jobs is a great guy. He's done a lot for the world in technology, not in a personal life, I don't know that much. But I quite like the fact he said, if you really look closely, most overnight successes took a long time. Don't expect things to happen overnight. Don't expect tomorrow to apply for a job, get it, and all of a sudden just be the happiest you ever be. It's a journey, so do take your time. And also for me, it's very important, achievement is an inside job. The donut is empty on the inside, but as we know, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to others. We should really think about what's achievement, what success looks like for me, regardless of what Laura's journey has been, what Jonathan's journey has been, what anyone on this call, the sessions you've attended so far. Learn from it, but make sure that you look for what you want to achieve in your life and work for it. So thank you. I'm going to break for questions because we've got time left to cover.
So you touched briefly on kind of when it's appropriate to connect with individuals and when it's more appropriate to follow people. So is there a general place that LinkedIn suggests best practices and etiquette?
It depends on how the platform evolves. Those are best practices that I personally am a big fan of. But on the last penultimate slide, I shared some resources which you can check to include a LinkedIn Learning course on how to rock your LinkedIn presence and then how to post. If you Google, there'll be a bunch of them coming out. But personally, from a connection standpoint, the etiquette there is if you know the person. If you don't know the person, but you've got something or purpose to send an invite, make sure to add that blurb. Don't just press send connect, because that is just, I find, a bit rude, because how am I expected to connect with someone that just send me an invite without a little line first, an opening line, as out of courtesy, as you would in real life, right? You wouldn't just, become friends with someone immediately in a bar. You would approach them, you would try to get a little bit of purpose to connect the dots there. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, Google or some of the resources that will follow up when Saba sends that through should help you as well.
For example, in something like this today, where you and I have spoken to each other, is that an appropriate time to request connection with someone?
Yes. So usually when I do sessions like this, I have quite a few people that commented on that, but they write a little blurb. I actually quite choosy. I see if somebody wrote something to say, I've watched your session, I've learned a thing or two, or can you send me that link again? I'm happy to. Or I want to be part of your network because I want to see some more of the content or on your feed, or people that you're connected to might be helpful to me. That's fine. So yes, that's a great example. Or if you go to an in-person networking event, immediately follow up to whoever you meet. Business cards nowadays are outdated. I don't even have them. Not sure many people that do. But it's a great way for you to use the LinkedIn app. There's actually quite a good technology that you can connect with someone live. You've probably seen the QR codes of today, the new business digital cards. But make sure that you follow up immediately after the event. That's what I do actually. When I go into an event and I meet someone that I might not need right now for whatever professional purpose it is, but I want to have them warm As soon as I meet them, I will send them a message saying it was a pleasure to meet you. I learned lots. I'm glad that we connected about this. Wishing you all the best. So whenever I'm ready to connect with this person in 2 years' time, let's say, I can pick up from where I left off. So that message is there, right? Oh yeah, I remember seeing that person at that event, rather than why is this person reaching out to me again? How did I meet them in the first place? So I find that helpful as well.
Brilliant, very helpful.
I did have a personal one for you. What would be your advice to not just students, but also working professionals in regards to wanting to post on LinkedIn? Because I know you covered quite a few slides in regards to, you can post about your achievements, you can post about certain elements that are happening in your day and the character elements and things like that. But I'm just wondering, because LinkedIn is a business platform, it is for communicating with businesses and business networks, and whereas Facebook has that whole social element with friends, and the two seem to be blurring quite nicely now, because with business associates, it's not just business, it's you become friendly and you become friends as time goes on. For instance, me and Jonathan, we worked together for 2-3 years and we're actually very good friends, and then from our friendship we obviously ended up launching Ideas to Action. So I guess my question to you would be, what is the general advice that you would give to someone wanting to leverage their network but in a bit more of a friendly way whilst keeping that professional tone, so it's different from Facebook but relevant for LinkedIn?
There's different schools of thought when it comes to how you should come across on LinkedIn. I work for LinkedIn and I believe in building personable relationships, but there's the tone and voice. I am friends of Jonathan on Instagram and Facebook, and if I drop him a message or if I see a post of his on my feed, I'll probably say, hey, what up? Great hoodie, mate. Something very friendly, very casual. Whereas if I'm on LinkedIn, as I did with Jonathan, it's like, great event you're organizing, wishing you all success. So there is a difference in the tone and voice and the language that you use on different platforms. But the content can somehow be more friendly on LinkedIn. It has been over the past year. So for instance, I saw someone posting today that they're very excited about Michelle Obama's podcast coming out today on Spotify. I mean, you might think, oh, what is this? Is this professional? This is a personal taste? Well, that shows a little bit about who you are as a person, and you can connect to others because then allows others to comment. Oh yes, me too, love Michelle. So there's no harm in bringing that personable content onto the platform. And we actually recommend people to do it, right? We are humans in the end of it all. We need to have things to connect. It's great that you are head of digital delivery and you might post a great white paper that your company produced, but it's a mix of things. So that's why I recommend there's a 3-2-1 rule as well. So 3 perhaps might be about company culture or the industry that you're working. But then you might want to have occasionally the more personable posts, or occasionally have the pat on the back, I've completed this, here we go, community, to let you know I've delivered this event, I presented this event, or achieved the certification, because it's also important. But it's just a mistake that a lot of people do, is that they think it's just one thing that you have to talk about. They can only talk about their business, what their business are doing, or they can only talk about what they achieved. No, think about others, think about the community. Hopefully we'll see more and more of that appearing. My community is full of that because it's full of LinkedIners and people that are a mix of everything happening, and it's quite refreshing. So it's never tiring to scroll to the feed.
Laura, I'm going to be cheeky. I know we've literally got like 1 minute left, but I do actually have a question for you. It's regarding since COVID, and even more so 2020. Obviously, I'm very active on LinkedIn as we follow each other. But what I've noticed of late, I feel like a lot of the users have now just started to post, for me anyway, irrelevant content. So for example, I have seen someone post about getting engaged, for example. And for me, that's a sort of social—
That's a fine line.
Very fine line, exactly. Because of COVID, you feel that the behaviors of the actual user base have rapidly shifted just due to experiences and the things you've gone through regarding Corona.
There's different ways to answer that. Of course, we have seen change in the way people consume content and actually participate on LinkedIn. There has been an increase of 55% year on year of people coming and commenting and basically linking with their network, because we are in the virtual world. So more than ever, we are there to do that. But to answer your question, I hardly ever see anything about engagement and proposals. And that's because of my network. So my immediate feedback to you is who is in your network? you have got full control. What's on your feed? People that you are connected with, people that you follow, and things that you want to hear about. So if you will start to see irrelevant stuff, delete, mute. There's different ways you can do that on LinkedIn and other social media. If you don't want to be rude and completely delete that person, you can mute them as well. Because I find as soon as I start to see a lot of political factors around conspiracies, around is COVID even real, I feel that's not for me. That's perhaps for Twitter. I don't want to see this person's commenting constantly about that. I'm going to mute them for now. Something else that can happen is trends in life, right? So COVID, everybody just talked about COVID, and all of a sudden Black Lives Matter, that was the big topic. Everybody wants to have a voice. And I felt important. I don't know if you agree, but there was a whole debate. Should CEOs or should politicians have a voice on the matter? In my opinion, yes, they should. And LinkedIn is a good place for that if you apply the right tone and voice. You wouldn't use the F word on LinkedIn, for instance, but you might feel comfortable to do that on Facebook because you know people there around you know how your tone and voice is personal. But yes, but just tailor your feed so you have the right people there. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but we have to just be conscious of the fact that the world is happening around us, and a social platform is a place for us to discuss. Especially when we can't meet people, in the office or in events. LinkedIn becomes that platform. So you will see COVID stuff, you will see Black Lives Matter. And recently my LinkedIn feed has been inundated with the fact that we made 6% of our workforce redundant. We are facing that together, but you can be the owner of your feed by muting people if you feel they're inappropriate.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. It's been an absolutely amazing talk and insight into the platform. I was actually taking notes during it, so I will be putting some of these points into practice. As you well know, I live on the platform. I'm on it literally like every day, several times a day. So again, thank you from myself and Sabah. Thank you to all of the
educational.
Yeah, thank you, Sabah. And thank you for everyone that's attended. Again, Laura, thank you so much. So thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks again, Laura.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.